Welcome to the Modern Taoist with Kit Man. Ancient wisdom, modern life, and the way. Visit us online at taoananda.com or find us on all the socials. Now, the Modern Taoist.
Well, hello and welcome to the Modern Taoist. My name is Kit Man. Thank you for joining me today. And today, first of all, let's do our business. Let's do our Taoy business. Please like, follow, subscribe. Thank you. Leave a review if you choose. If you're on Spotify, interact with us any way you want. You can find us on all the platforms. But we are hosted on Spotify, so it's much more interactive there. Follow us on all the socials and go to taoananda.org, DAOANANDA.org. If you would like to ask a question or check out the stuff we have in the merch store, we don't make any money on that. All that money goes to our retreat that we are planning to build in the latter part of the 2020s. So we're in the middle of the 2020s right now, and that brings up the following topic for today. It wasn't that long ago, and if you are over the age of 30, it's going to seem like yesterday that talk of artificial intelligence and robots belonged mostly to science fiction. We have multiple movies, stories of machines rising up, technology outpacing humanity. That was all in movies and novels, but now those imagined futures are showing up right here in our daily lives, and we have access to them, from chat programs that answer questions to algorithms that decide what you look at on social media. AI is no longer a science fiction idea. It is here. It is working quietly in the background of our routines. It is in places you don't even know that it is. And there is a war between people that say that they don't need AI, they hate AI, they're never going to be a part of AI, and the people that are embracing AI and trying to integrate it into their lives. The pace of this change feels startling. I think that's the takeaway that I have at the very beginning of this conversation, is that the pace feels startling. Just 10 years ago, most of us were treating smartphones as something brand new. 20 years ago, we were learning what it meant to carry the internet in our pockets. And now we're facing systems that not only retrieve information, but generate it. We're facing machines that can mimic human voices, compose music, write stories. The line between a tool and a companion is beginning to blur. And this changes fast. We did not have hands-on access to AI 5 years ago. It was in the background of a bunch of stuff that you don't realize 5 years ago. But as far as end-user access, when COVID was going on, we didn't have it, and now we do. And with change happening this fast, it is only natural for us to feel anxiety. People wonder things that are real world problems. Is my job going to survive? Does my creativity still matter? Are we going to lose the ability to tell what is real and what is artificial? And in moments like this, our fear tends to dominate the conversation because we come at it from a worst case scenario future. Or we push the whole thing aside and ignore it until we absolutely can't. Now, in Taoism, we approach everything differently. We don't take these extremes of worst case or ignoring. Instead of asking, how do we control it, the Taoist is going to ask, how do we walk with it? Technology is not going to go away. barring an end of the world catastrophic electromagnetic pulse, it's not changing. You can battle against it. You can rail against it. You can protest against it. But let me tell you something that is a fact of life. 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 20 years from now, all of your protestations now will not change what is going to happen in the world of technology. There is simply too much of it. That ball is rolling down the hill, and there is too much money involved. And so we need to realize and remember that technology is not separate from the flow of life. It's just another branch growing from the same root. The challenge is not to reject it or to surrender to it, but to see it clearly for what it is and try to find balance in its presence. So, in this episode, I want to explore what it means to meet AI and robotics with a Taoist mindset. How do we stay human in an age where machines can imitate humanity? How do we find stillness in a world that is racing towards the next invention? How do we carry forward the timeless wisdom of Taoism even as the tools around us keep changing? When we talk about AI and robotics, the first thing that surfaces in most conversations is fear. Because our culture has trained us to think of these machines as our rivals. Science fiction has filled our heads with stories of robots that overthrow their creators, computers that wake up and decide to launch nuclear war because humanity is expendable, machines that continually push us into irrelevance. Even in casual conversations, people say things like the machines are taking over or AI is going to replace us. That language, when someone says that, tells you a lot. It shows that most of us approach technology as a threat because fear is a powerful storyteller. And when fear drives the story, it makes the edges of possibility look like the whole picture. You see what I'm saying? It makes the extremes look like the truth. And when we end up swinging between extremes, we have total domination by machines on one side and complete rejection of them on the other side. Both of these visions are distortions. And when your vision is distorted, you're blind to what's going on in the middle. The Tao Te Ching reminds us that extremes are not where the Tao lives. The Tao flows in the spaces between, in the shifting balance that moves through all things. When fear locks your gaze onto an extreme, whether it's technologically or emotionally or politically, when you lock onto an extreme, it narrows your vision and it disconnects you from the living ground in the middle, where human choice still matters. The metaphor I want to use here is a mirror. Technology reflects the qualities of its maker. An AI system, no matter how far advanced, is built from the choices of programmers, the data of past human actions, and the intentions of its designers. When we look into it, we don't see a separate intelligence. We see our own biases, our own creativity, and desires bounced back to us in a new form. If the reflection looks distorted, it's because of us. It's because of the source, us, already carrying that distortion. And that mirror effect is what unsettles so many people, right? We see tools that learn faster than we can, that generate words and images and music. Instead of marveling at it, we feel exposed. Because these systems reveal not just what humans know, but it reveals how humans think. Our patterns, our shortcuts, our assumptions, and even our prejudices. To look at AI is to look at a cultural mirror that suddenly scales our strengths and weaknesses into a global size. You understand? The cultural problem is not simply that AI exists. The problem is that we have built tools capable of holding up this mirror, but we've not yet cultivated the calmness or the clarity to accept what we see. We're cavemen seeing a mirror for the first time. We look at it and we don't understand that that's us. Instead of meeting the reflection with honesty, we project our unease onto the technology itself. We want to break the mirror rather than understand what it is. We say, oh, well, this machine is dangerous. What we really mean is, I don't like what it shows me about myself and my culture and humanity and about the speed at which I am living. Taoism suggests that clarity comes from not smashing the mirror, but from softening your gaze and trying to understand. Until we can see both what is shown and what is behind it, what is behind the invention. This is the Taoist way. Accept that reflection is real, but it's not the whole story. Recognize that every tool carries the imprint of its maker, and that responsibility remains with the one who wields it. So if we approach AI and robotics only with fear and with dread, we miss the chance to use them as teachers. They can reveal a lot about how we consume, how we chase convenience, the way we hand over decisions to systems outside ourselves. These are not questions about machines, they're questions about us, about humanity. When new technology arrives, the human tendency is to either overestimate it or underestimate it. With any technology. That's how it has always been. When radio first arrived, there were people that said, this is a passing fad, this is the dumbest thing I've ever seen, who cares about this? And there were other people that said, this will change the world. With AI and robotics, we fall into both of those traps at once, which is really interesting. Because on one side, we inflate the tools into something almost godlike, imagining them as these self-aware beings with their own agendas. And then on the other side, we dismiss them as nothing more than a big fancy calculator. Neither one of these views is accurate. The trap here is really simple to me. When we exaggerate or dismiss, when we do one of those two extremes, we stop paying attention to the actual present moment. Dealing with AI and robotics is no different than dealing with any problem that comes up in life. When you exaggerate the problem or dismiss it completely, you stop paying attention to the actual issue. We hand over clarity to stories that come from fear or denial. Taoism reminds us that misunderstanding grows whenever we lose contact with what is right here, what is right now. Take the example of the predictive algorithm. Something online that you maybe it's Amazon Prime or something. Something that suggests what movie you might like or what product you might like to buy. People either credit the machine with mystical insight, like, wow, it knows me better than I know myself, or they scoff at it. What a ridiculous thing. These systems are all junk. I wouldn't watch that movie in a million years. In truth, the algorithm isn't psychic, nor is it useless. It's a tool designed to work from patterns. Sometimes it reveals something useful. Sometimes it misses the mark. The misunderstanding comes from the stories that we, not the machine, that we layer on top of it. Like a shadow. Technology casts a shadow that can look larger or smaller than the object itself, depending on how you look at it. When the light of culture shines on AI, the shadow grows into these science fiction fears of machines plotting to kill us. When that same light shifts, the shadow shrinks into jokes about robots that can't even fold laundry correctly. But the shadow is never the thing itself. That is a distorted projection, dependent on the angle at which you are looking at it. And when you mistake the shadow for the real object, you are reacting to an illusion. The shadow play is what keeps people trapped. It's what makes people argue about this topic. I have yet to see an argument about this topic that didn't come from one extreme or another. Because the fact is we argue about the shape of the shadow instead of looking directly at the machine and asking, what is it actually doing? How is it actually being used? What choices are humans making using that tool? Don't chase the shadow. Don't fear the shadow. Don't dismiss the shadow. Look at the source. You understand? Why does that matter? Because misunderstanding something carries consequences. When we inflate anything, but specifically we're talking about AI today. So if we inflate AI into an all-powerful force, we hand over our responsibility. We say the system decided, as if the systems were an authority instead of a tool. You're going to see this a lot. You're going to see it at work. The system decided we needed to let you go. No, it didn't. The system suggested that perhaps your position was not the most efficient way to run the business. But the human beings decided to let you go. The systems are not an authority, they are a tool. When we dismiss AI on the other extreme as being trivial, we miss the subtle ways that it's going to shape our lives right beneath our noses. Both extremes disconnect us from the responsibility on one end and from awareness on the other end. So you have to walk between these traps, neither inflating nor dismissing, to meet the tool for what it is, a tool, a creation that reflects our choices, magnifies them, and puts them into motion at a scale that we've never seen before. So the question isn't, what will this horrible shadow do to us? The question is, what are we casting into the light that makes that shadow appear in the first place? Machines are not inherently wise. They're not inherently foolish. They're not inherently threatening. They're not inherently harmless. They are mirrors and amplifiers of what already exists within us. And our job is to return to the ground of clarity. Whenever culture is gripped by change, let's start with the fact that change is what is the driving fear here. When culture is gripped by change, people divide. It's just human nature. With AI and robotics, that divide is very sharp. There is not a bunch of middle ground, unfortunately, in our culture right now in regards to AI and robotics. Some people embrace the tools with enthusiasm, others recoil in suspicion. In between, there are people who simply feel lost, unsure how to navigate this world where technology is moving faster and faster and faster than their ability to keep up. It's easy in this environment to slip into judgment. Right now, there is someone listening to this right now that is judging how they're going to respond because they feel so strongly one way or the other. When we hear someone who resists AI and think, oh, that person's an idiot, they're just being stubborn. And then we meet somebody that leans on it for everything and we think, oh, they're just lazy, or they're naive, or they're refusing to accept human as a creator. And, there's all kinds of judgment that hardens the lines between us. And we need the opposite. Taoism encourages us to meet these moments of division, not with scolding, not with arguing, but with some freaking compassion. Compassion here means remembering that fear and excitement are both natural human responses to change. We need to start treating each other in all aspects of life like human beings. But especially in this topic, arguing about this makes no sense. The person who resists it might be holding on to some stability. Understand that. The person who embraces it might be seeking some opportunity. Understand that. Both of these are responses to uncertainty. Look for clarity. Soften towards both positions. Step back and have some distance. As we've talked about before many, many times, distance in Taoism does not mean apathy. It means creating enough space between yourself and the swirl of reaction so that you can see clearly. If there's one message that I've always tried to teach, whether it's my children or people that work for me in an actual corporate situation or through Taoist teaching, is that to understand that stepping back and just pausing for a second allows you to see more clearly. Imagine standing on a busy street corner, cars and bikes and buses and pedestrians going every direction. Picture that in your mind right now. If you step directly into the flow, you're going to get swept along without any perspective. But if you step back from that a bit, just step back off the sidewalk, put your back against the wall of the building, even a few feet, the whole pattern becomes visible because you've created enough distance that you can see when and how to move. This is the Taoist stance in the age of AI. Step back far enough to see the pattern. Not just the hype and the panic and the fear and the loathing and the excitement, but the human responses behind both. Compassion helps us avoid dismissing others. And the distance helps us avoid being swallowed by their reaction. And when you add compassion plus distance, you equal clarity. So think about the conversations that are happening right now. In workplaces, some people are worried about their jobs, and rightly so, while others imagine brand new roles emerging. How can I become the master of this rather than the victim of it? In education, some warn that AI will destroy learning, while others explore how it might enhance teaching. These conversations can quickly turn hostile because they're charged with two different extremes: fear and hope. Taoist practice would not demand we pick a side. Instead, we ask to remember and observe with patience, to listen without rushing to judgment, and remember that extremes are the edges of the flow. Back to that busy street, standing in the middle, the chaos would feel overwhelming. Cars zipping by you on both sides. You're standing on the yellow line and cars are just... That would feel overwhelming. If you step back and put your back against the wall on the sidewalk, it doesn't make the street disappear. It doesn't make the cars stop whipping by, but it gives you perspective. Compassion is that lens that softens our view of the people in the street. Each one of them are rushing for their own reason. Distance is the practice that lets us see the flow without being caught up in it. This way of approaching change is not a weakness. Some may mistake distance for avoidance, but we're working from a clarity perspective. Because Taoism and clarity will show us that strength lies in seeing things as they are without being consumed by the edges of extremes. Standing on the curb is not retreating, it's choosing how and when to step off. Taoist practice is not locked up in the mountains like we've talked about a million times. It's a living way shaped by the moment that we're standing in right now. And if that moment includes AI and robotics, that is a reality. And then practice must meet that reality. Not by rejecting the tools and not by surrendering to them, but by asking, how can I walk in balance with them in my daily life? The first practice is discernment. I've got 3 practices for you, okay? Discernment, restraint, and presence. The first practice is discernment. Machines today can create stories, images, even conversations. Like my phone ringing right there for no reason. It is tempting to believe them at face value, but Taoism teaches us to see without grabbing. Discernment means pausing before accepting what is placed before you, whether it's a generated paragraph or a recommendation on a screen. Instead of reacting with either trust or suspicion, you practice a moment of awareness. What is this tool showing me? Where did it come from? How does it serve me, or is it pulling me away from the path? That pause is practice. The breath of clarity before you get attached. The second practice is restraint. Taoist wisdom speaks of Wu Wei. Wu Wei we talk about all the time. Effortless action. The art of not forcing. And in this age, Wu Wei might mean choosing not to automate everything, even when that option is possible. You could let AI write your email. You could let it generate every image, plan your schedule. But just because a tool can do something doesn't mean it should. Restraint is a kind of a strength. It's knowing when to use the tool and when to let silence, patience, or your own hand do the work. Don't over-season the cooking. Simplicity will reveal the honest answer. Are there times where you could do the job yourself without relying on a computer to do it for you? Sure there are. Lots of times. I could easily talk text an entire podcast into an AI program and have it repeat it back and just say, expand this by 20%, reduce this by 30%. I could have it do whatever I wanted. And then you would never even know the difference, whether I did it or the computer did it. But I choose to do it myself. The third practice is presence. AI systems are built to replicate fragments of humanity. Our language, our image, our patterns, but they don't carry presence. They don't understand poetry. They only understand the wording of poetry. They don't understand romance. They only understand the wording of romance. They don't understand feeling. They do not stand in a room and look someone in the eye and feel the air shift in the conversation. So, as a Taoist, we return to those places where presence matters. Choose the human tasks: storytelling, care, creativity, listening. No algorithm can replicate that kind of spirit. They can put something out there that resembles it, but we're going to know whether something is human-generated or AI-generated if you just pay attention. When you blindly watch something and just go, oh yeah, that's pretty cool. Well, you may not understand the difference, but if you pay attention, you can tell if something is created with a spirit or whether it's just generated. That is the difference. Human beings create. AI generates. Presence is not just what we give others, it's what we remember in ourselves. Being human is not measured in speed or efficiency. It's measured in the way we inhabit a moment fully. The metaphor is a craftsman with tools. A skilled craftsman owns many sharp instruments, but it doesn't use them all at once. Some of them remain sheathed until the right wood, the right joint, the right shape demands their use. In the same way, discernment, restraint, and presence are tools of the Taoist path. They're not flashy, and they don't promise mastery over machines, but they keep the human hand clear, steady, and the human spirit intact while the world around us accelerates. Because, make no mistake, these aren't going away. The technology is only going to accelerate, so we, as human beings, must, absolutely must, remain clear. None of these practices require rejecting AI or robots. They require remembering who you are in their presence. When you choose to discern, when you hold back from over-automation, when you bring your full presence into a moment, you are practicing Taoism in the midst of modern life, which is what this podcast is about. These choices shape your relationship with technology more than any headline about its extremes, about its dangers, about its promises. practice steadies us in the present. But Taoism also asks us to look ahead. How does restrainment and restraint and presence shape that future that we're walking into? Every age in the history of humanity has its defining tool. Starting with fire, moving onto the wheel, the printing press, electricity, the automobile, the internet. Every one of those things arrived with the exact same extremes in their day that we have in our day. The exact same promises and the exact same fears. Fire, when it first showed up, enabled you to be hopeful because you could be warm and you could cook your food, but it also could burn you and burn your whole home down. The two extremes. Every single thing that has ever showed up in history has those two extremes. What makes this moment different is the speed of transformation, and that is why it's making these extremes feel more extreme, because we don't have time to adjust. We're not adjusting over the course of 20 or 30 years or 100 years or any. We're adjusting in real time with a single breath of history. It is changing not over the course of the next 5 years. It's changing over the course of the next 5 minutes. So the Taoist question is not, will these tools overwhelm us? The question is, how will we move with them without losing the middle way? This is the forward movement, imagining not only how we survive technology, but how we continue to walk in the Tao while surrounded by it. One way forward is to simply recognize that technology will always extend outward, but wisdom must turn inward. The more the world fills with machine speed, the more valuable human slowness becomes. The more images that are generated, the more meaningful becomes the images drawn by hand. The more voices that are simulated, the more precious becomes the sound of someone speaking their own lived truth. Taoism teaches us that opposites define each other. As AI grows louder, our responsibility is not to match its volume, but to deepen our quiet. Another way forward is to remember that technology magnifies scale. But Taoist practice honors the small. AI can scan entire libraries, generate vast data sets, process at unimaginable speed. But the Tao is found in the single breath, the single step, the single choice to walk with awareness, to bring it down internally. Because the scale of the machine does not erase the value of a small act. In fact, it makes that small act more vital. Every decision we make about how to use or not use a tool ripples outward. Forward movement is not about the grand control of the future. It's about small, steady steps that accumulate into the shape of a life. It's the river meeting the dam. The dam redirects the flow, harnesses the power, and changes the landscape downstream. But the river is still a river. It doesn't forget how to flow. AI and robotics may act as the dam in the cultural current. Powerful, imposing, disruptive, yet beneath them, around them, and sometimes through them, the water continues. We continue. We are the river, not the dam. We are part of the Tao. It doesn't end when it meets an obstacle. It finds a new path. So when we think about the future, the question is not whether machines will grow more capable, because they will. Arguing about it now solves nothing. The deeper question is whether we will continue to grow in clarity alongside the machines. Will we allow our fear to harden us, or will we use this moment as a mirror to see ourselves more clearly? You have to become deeper. Will you let misunderstanding trap you in the shadows, or will you step back enough to see the larger flow? Will we meet each other with compassion, remembering rather that everyone is moving through this change in their own way? Forward movement, in Taoist terms, is not controlling the current. It is trusting in the flow paired with your awareness of your place inside the flow. So we may not get to choose how machines evolve, but we can choose how we individually respond. How do you walk? How do you carry your humanity into what comes next? And this is where our path now bends. The Taoist way is not to resist the flow, not to drown in it, but to step into it with presence. So, as we enter the close of this episode, the question lingers: what does it mean to remain fully human in a world where machines imitate humanity? And it is our responsibility to do so. Remain human. Notice the little things. Have clarity about how others are dealing with these very real issues in their lives. So as we arrive here at the end of this conversation, I find myself thinking not about the machines, but about something much, much older. I find myself thinking about the sky at night. And when you look up, you see stars whose light left them thousands, sometimes hundreds of thousands, sometimes millions of years ago. And that light is only reaching us now. Some of those stars that you see no longer exist. And they haven't for millennia. Yet the light still travels. It still touches us. And that is what it feels like to live in a world of rapid change. The present and the past overlapping. Signals from long ago still shining as we step into something new. AI and robotics may be the latest invention, but it isn't the last. The rhythm of being human has not changed. It doesn't matter if it's the fire or the wheel or the internet or a robot that brings you your food. You're still a human being. You still breathe. You still feel. And we will stand in the flow of the Tao, connected to all that came before us and all that is yet to come. Technology may accelerate that pace around us. But it cannot accelerate the pace of the human heart. So the next time you feel pulled into the speed of the machine world, step outside, look at the night sky. Let your eyes soften. Notice that those stars that have outlived entire civilizations are still shining into your moment right then. And remember that you too are part of something larger and older than any invention. In Taoism, the question is never, how do we survive change? But it is, how do we live fully within us, or within it? The stars remind us that presence is not about controlling the flow, but about remembering our place in it. You are small, you are luminous, and you are connected. But you are still you. And that's where I will leave you today. If any of this resonated you in any way whatsoever, if this conversation made you think of someone in your life, please share it with them. The Tao isn't meant to be held alone. Podcasts like this grow through word of mouth. I don't do advertising. Community builds one share at a time. If this touched you, send it to someone that could use a little Taoist perspective today. And I thank you for joining me on The Modern Taoist.
Thanks for listening to The Modern Taoist with Kit Man. Visit us online at dawananda.com or find us on all the socials. Please like or subscribe on this platform, and thanks again.